The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
Hello, and welcome to the Everyday Therapy Podcast, where we discuss everyday relatable topics that help you with your overall emotional growth and wellness. So tune in to hear us therapists. I'm Julianne Schroeder.
And I'm JC Rader, both LPC licensed professional counselors.
And yeah, we're located at White Rock Counseling here in Dallas, if you are in the area. Anyway, we love to chat with others to create positive change in your everyday life by sharing tips, stories, and inspiration.
Yeah. We're so excited today because we have two of our favorite people, some of our favorite, guests. This is our second time to have guests. But we have Jennifer Landon, our LPC. So she's a licensed professional counselor and certified in mindfulness, yoga therapy. She got her start in wilderness therapy, which I always thought was so cool.
Yes.
When I first met her. And she's been a counselor for almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. And I think this is so interesting. So she specializes in trichotillomania, which, what a mouthful. Body-focused repetitive disorders.
Behaviors,
mm-hmm. Thank you. And it's everything from hair pulling, skin picking, super specific type of therapy needed for that, and also the Enneagram, which is what we'll be talking about today. Yes, good. And then Laura Cohen, so she is a certified International Association yoga therapist. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And she's been doing yoga for 15 years, and they're both my mentors for yoga and the Enneagram and therapy and everything. So we're so excited to have them both here today. And our everyday topic for today is the Enneagram.
Yay!
So excited.
I hope we can do it justice.
Yes.
It's a bunch of good stuff.
Yeah. And I remember first hearing about the Enneagram. Jen, you shared the Enneagram with me first.
And for me too.
I didn't realize that.
You were my introduction to the Enneagram as well.
That's pretty special.
JC taught me, so it's a legacy.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. That's kind of how it works, you know. Yeah. Getting people talking about it is really the key. It makes it come alive.
Well, and it's hard not to talk about it because I remember when I first found out my number. So I'm a 2, which is the caregiver, the nurturer, and I'm like, this makes so much sense. And it really helped me figure out like what my motivations were. Like I was in a lot of pain and suffering in relationships and just couldn't quite figure out why. But then like being able to see my motivation and what my channel or direction for growth was, the opposite of what I was doing, was just so life-changing for me.
It has been life-changing understanding that about yourself, knowing why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes, having that awareness.
Yeah, and that's, what I think the Enneagram does well versus, not to put down the Myers-Briggs, because most people know that, right? The I-E-N-T. What are the letters again?
E-N-J.
It's some letters. I think I'm an ENFP. Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, but what I love about the Enneagram is that it, like you just said, Laura, is why are you the way you are? Where I think that the Myers-Briggs kind of misses that and just tells you like, okay, this is what you're like and how you work.
Well, and it gives you a path too. It gives you a path for growth.
Yeah. It gives you like a specific direction to like work towards, I think. So let's get into it. We have lots of good questions later this podcast to talk about from some of our listeners, and then you have a chance to call in and ask a question if you like as well. We'll get that number up here later in the podcast, but let's get started. What the heck is the Enneagram?
That is really the big question of the day, isn't it?
It is the big question.
And it's hard to explain because it is a lot. But to sum it up, it's a model of 9 different ways of interacting in the world, and each individual identifies with one of those ways. Okay. And so it teaches us why we do what we do, why we behave the way we behave, why we feel the way we feel, and why we think the way we think. That's sort of it in a nutshell. It gives us a lot of insight as to what motivates us in life, why we're doing what we're doing. It highlights our blind spots, so that we can then have a choice if we can see what our blind spots are. Yeah.
I think that's a really important piece that you brought up, that it highlights your blind spot. Because oftentimes we walk through life and we don't even, it's a blind spot. So you don't see it at all. Yeah. And with the Enneagram's help, there's a whole nother way, like, oh wow. And it also feels really good to be able to see that blind spot. Yeah. And not have to walk through.
It feels hurt good.
Uh-huh.
You know,
it feels hurt good sometimes.
Yeah. No, I joke because I mean, and I think this is something that maybe you all can attest to or speak to about your number, is that you don't often want that number, right? Or try to reject it.
And I think that's when you are closest to knowing if you're identifying with your number.
Yeah. When you read the different numbers and characteristics, it seems like the one that feels the most to you is probably the one that you are
feeling it in your body.
Yeah. Right. Richard Rohr says if you're not kind of humiliated by your number, then you're not really getting it. Yeah. But I really think it's important here to acknowledge that it does point out, we can knock up against the wall and not know why we keep getting in the same rut that we get in. And the Enneagram helps to highlight that, and it can be very humbling. And at the same time, the Enneagram, so that's kind of the personality part and some of the depth of the Enneagram, but it's also in contrast to our true essence. So we all have we have a true essence when we come into this world, and that we're really spiritually connected. And I think that this is an important thing to honor the Enneagram, because it is a spiritual understanding of the way the world works.
Yeah,
too.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it is described as psychological and spiritual, and a lot of people don't get that spiritual aspect to that.
Yes.
But yeah, we have our true essence coming into the world.
That's right. And then we have our defense mechanism to kind of armor up.
I was just, I've heard it described before that it becomes your armor that you walk through the world with.
Yeah, because we're told we're not good enough, or not this or not that, or too much this, too much that. And then we create these defenses around what we think we should or should not be. Is that right? Yeah. Or
you don't even have to be told that, but sometimes we just feel that. We feel inadequate, or when you're a kid and you don't know what's going on, you might start developing this. And so then we all develop sort of defense mechanism, and actually each number has a certain defense mechanism that's associated with their number. That's their primary defense. And so at our true essence, we're really all beautiful, lovely, radiant beings. And the Enneagram, through the hard work of facing your shadow stuff, you get to move into that more pure essence that you were really meant to be.
It seems like it's getting back in touch with that.
Well, uncovering it, swimming toward it, because generally our defense mechanisms are the opposite of what our true essence is.
Okay.
Or the things that our way of coping in the world is contrary to what our true essence is. And so we have to find this path back to our true essence, and then we can be our best self.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Hillary?
Just that the work through the Enneagram is to transcend the number. We're not, for me, I'm not a 9. I am I encompass all of these things when I begin to realize what my true nature, really is.
Yeah. So all the numbers as a whole make up that true essence, I guess. Is that?
Well, each number has kind of a specific true essence that the gift that they bring to the world. But Laura's correct in that it's as you come into that wisdom and as you grow into it, the Enneagram's so connected. And so you really do pick up the energies of all the other numbers and become more well-rounded. And
it's almost like finding balance, ultimately.
Always. I love that word.
Yeah.
And so for like our listeners, I'm just imagining like listening and then saying, okay, so what I'm hearing is that, okay, I might have a dominant number, but that, and like certain, I guess, ways of operating, but I'm not limited to that, right? Okay. Is that okay?
Well, yes, you're not limited. Okay. You're always, okay, so the way you are in the life, what motivates you in the way that you show up in the world is always going to kind of be there, because we can't get away from our personality. I mean, we just can't.
Which is a good thing, right?
Because we all but we can understand it and have awareness around it and become our best self in that personality. And as we do that, we can start grabbing some of the energies of the personalities around us, but we're always really that number.
Sure.
Okay.
I have a funny story about defining my number. That kind of just, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. I can't escape that I'm a 2, right? A 2 is the helper.
Oh, Lord, we have 3 2s here?
Yeah.
Sorry, Laura, I'm sorry.
That's the counselor's job, I think. The 2.
Yeah. So, but I was like, no, I'm not a 2. I don't do enough. I can't be a 2. And then I'm like, oh, but the 2 always feels like they're not doing enough. And well, I mean, I think for me too, I came a little bit later to this Enneagram game, but introduced to it. But I was thinking of myself as an unhealthy 2, and now I can see like, oh, okay, yeah, I do give to others, and I feel like I can take care of myself more. But the fact that that still surfaced of, oh, I'm not a 2 because I don't do enough. It's just, I think that what you're saying, you can't run away from it, right?
Exactly. You can be aware of it, and I'm glad you mentioned unhealthy or healthy. So in the Enneagram, with each number, there's several different layers of health. So the people can show up in a very unhealthy way in that number, all the way up to the top where you're really your best self. And so we all fall somewhere in that range.
Yeah.
And I think that brings us to another important point, that there's not a good or a bad number. You're just a number that you identify with, and within that you can move through health and disintegration.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing that out. That's so important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's certain personality types that I think, like I was saying about myself and the 2, like, oh, I don't want to be a 2. 2's like bad or whatever. But like within health of a 2, or a healthy version of a 2, like all of the numbers are good.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I hope everybody can really celebrate who they really are.
Yeah.
And it is a celebration.
Yeah. And building that, like we were first talking about, like change can't naturally occur unless you have that awareness and insight, which is like the goal of this. And I think, Julianne, you were saying this on our drive over here, is like fully accepting your number. I think what you're saying, like having that self-compassion.
So important. That's come up a lot with the work that we've been doing, the importance of teaching people self-compassion as you do begin to figure out or identify with a number, because it can
harsh.
be
it's tough.
a lot of shadow stuff can come up in that.
And for those listeners that don't know what shadow, that's just like the no, we're just the yuck stuff, like, oh, that, I don't know, quote unquote, like bad aspects of ourselves. But we're human, we all have our stuff. So I guess
well, it's the stuff that we've put into behind us. That's why, like the shadow, the stuff we put behind us that we really are uncomfortable to acknowledge is there. And you're right in that the Enneagram kind of brings that out, and you're kind of like, okay, it's time to look at this.
Is there anything else that you want to share about, like, just general, like, what the Enneagram is? Or does that feel like kind of basic, that's the Enneagram?
Well, there's so much.
I know.
Yeah.
We're doing like Enneagram 101 today.
Yeah,
totally.
We'll have Enneagram part 2 at some point.
Yeah. Are we going to talk a little bit about the history?
Yeah, speak to that.
Well, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the history, because I think that that's one of the really cool parts about what Laura and I are doing, which is bringing in the body work and the body movement and yoga and meditation to the work with the Enneagram. And the reason why I think it's so cool is you guys are going to have to forgive me, and I have to use notes because there's so much information.
Yeah, please.
But originally, it's very convoluted. It's hard to get a good read on what the history is.
And I think it's like yoga in this manner. Because it's so old, there's so much tradition, it's ancient, it's spiritual, so it's hard sometimes to collect and gather.
Well, I heard it was verbally passed down for so long.
There you go, just like yoga.
Therefore, it was, hard to document.
It was really, and essentially, it's a couple thousand years old, and it's hit all of the major spiritual traditions in its journey over to the West. And
wow, that's cool.
I know it's it's got some Sufi in its history. It's got Judaism. It's got Christianity, the Desert Fathers, so George Gurdjieff, he was the one who kind of originally in 1916. He is the one who started understanding and looking at the Enneagram, and then he passed his knowledge on to Oscar Ichazo, a South American spiritual teacher. But what I think is so neat about that is that he used dance and body movement and all that kind of stuff in order to teach the principles of the Enneagram. And so I feel like Laura and I are kind of going back to the beginning and going back to the meditative part of it and the body movement and really embracing and embodying what your number is about.
Especially when you talk about it from an energetic standpoint, of each number having a particular energy in the way we move, through the world, that when we bring it to, or when we integrate yoga with the Enneagram, then as we integrate those two things, the body movement, the energy, everything comes alive.
Right. Well, and we know how powerful mindfulness and meditation and prayer and yoga, body movement is, and to pair it with this knowledge and information, old wisdom, like that just seems like unstoppable, really powerful.
Yeah, I would love to hear, when we get into defining each number, a little bit about, what would that look like with yoga for each number?
Can we
I can draw some conclusions, but I would love to hear.
Yeah, can we do a brief?
We actually can, because it's really an energy. I'm so glad you used that word. Each number is an energy, and so we do have energy work that we do and guided meditations that focus on that particular energy for that number.
And I don't have it with me. I wish I did. We we placed poses with each number as kind of like showing up as. Some of them that I remember we'll bring up.
And we'll talk about this later, where you can find Jen and Laura, because they will be doing a workshop on the Enneagram and yoga, which is pretty cool. But let's talk about a little basics of each number. Get to know the numbers.
You got it.
Okay.
Well, I have to say,
where are you going to start?
I was going to say, I have to preface this with an apology to my daughter, because she's an Enneagram 9 and she says, we're always last.
Okay, I see. Gotcha.
But sorry, but I'm going to start at 1 just for my own clarification.
Okay.
And we will do justice to that 9. You have to make sure that we leave enough time for the 9.
Okay. We have about 15 minutes. So
for all of this, for the 1 to 9.
So
it goes quick.
Okay, let's do it. So the Enneagram 1 is again, this is more of the personality profile. So we're kind of just giving you a caricature of what each number is. So the Enneagram 1 is the perfectionist. They're known as the perfectionists. They are highly principled people, very moral. They're wonderful leaders. They are very thoughtful. They put a lot of time and energy into what they should do that's right or what's wrong. They have a lot of justice in them, and they really want to do the right thing, and they don't like when the wrong thing's being done, and there's kind of in their thinking there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things.
I've also heard the one be called the reformer. Have you heard that before? Yeah.
Yeah, because they reform the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's who you want, like as like a healthy one as a leader.
As a leader.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we can't imagine the amount of energy that they put into doing something, you know, to getting something right, to changing the world, to making policies that count, that, you know, they're very,
lot of care and time.
A lot of care and time.
Yeah.
I think the pose that we chose for the one was just Warrior One, because it's so powerful. It's so solid. It's a leader. A line from Naka, we keep our knife by our side, you know, but we're ready to stand to stand by when needed. So it's good to have that number one by your side, because they're powerful.
Yeah. So why are they so powerful? Why are they a one?
Well,
what's their motivation?
Yeah, what's their motivation? Okay, so their motivation is there is a right way. There is a right way to do this, and let me show you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've heard like an example of the one would be like they know the right way to load the dishwasher. Let me show you. Like a very simple, basic.
Yeah.
This is the way to
very
load the
organized,
dishwasher.
very tidy, have things lined up in a row. Nothing goes without being combed through.
Yeah. Which maybe some of the numbers, there might not be a right way to load the dishwasher, you know?
Right, exactly.
So,
So their motivation is toward getting things right.
Okay.
And improving themselves and others. So consequently, they're really hard on themselves.
Yeah.
They have
a
a
really
critical.
loud inner critic.
Yeah. Well, let's hear about the two.
Okay, moving on. Okay, here we go. Okay, all right. So the two is our heart. We've got three big hearts. Can everybody feel it? So really, they're the heart number, and you guys can probably talk to this really clearly. Nurturers, caregivers, really give to others. Is always ready to help a person out in need. They often know other people's emotions even better than that person knows their emotions. Very in touch, intuitive, caring, wants what's best. They're just big heart people, very loving.
And
we're
also,
great.
Yes, and so humble, but really we are sometimes like too self-sacrificing. Right?
Yes, well that's the shadow side, right?
Yeah.
Because then we don't know anything about what our own needs are, and we can really get lost in taking care of ourselves.
Yes,
Everybody
unaware of
loves
ourselves.
a two.
Yeah, Laura's married to a two.
I'm married to
Hi,
a
Carl.
Yeah. The thing with them is relationships are most important. They want to support others, and if those I love are happy, so am I. And they're motivated toward being appreciated and feeling important to others.
I remember Jen told me my message that I needed to hear from a romantic or significant other or friend, and it was, I am wanted. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's like my motivation is like, I need to know that I'm wanted. And I think that that's my goal, to help people and to serve others, is to know that I am wanted in a way. And twos can be the most manipulative, right?
Well, I don't know about most.
Okay,
What do you
okay.
think?
I'm gonna reject that.
In the sense that we can sometimes be unaware that maybe we're giving in order to get.
Like keeping
Bingo.
tally of things.
Bingo, absolutely.
And so that was super helpful for me to understand.
We
that.
give to hook people so that they will stick around and keep loving us.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's some of the more painful stuff is like you were saying, is you need to hear that you're wanted, and the truth is that twos don't really feel wanted, and so they do all these things for other people so they'll keep them around. Yeah.
The pose for the two was tree pose, because as they spread their branches, they're creating shade for all that's around. But the work is to remember that you have to be watered from your roots to allow those branches to expand to be the shade. So important for the two to water themselves first, and then
to grow tall. And yes, I love that.
That's a beautiful reminder.
Let's hear about the three.
Okay, the three.
Go for it. No.
Okay, the 3 is a performer. These guys are just amazing.
Movers and
they
shakers.
are efficient. Yes, movers and shakers. They're efficient. They get things done. They are looking really good as they do it. They make it look like it's nothing. That it's just easy, and it's sometimes some of the most hard work that they do, but yet they can just do it with such ease. And they are usually also considered performers. They love to have attention. They want to be seen for what they're doing. They love to be seen. One of my favorite stories is about a friend of mine, and she's a 3. And I just love watching this in action too, because we go bike riding at the lake every week, and there's this big hill to go down to the lake. And she is a crazy girl, and she throws her arms up and rides down this hill with her hands up. And she says, now, because it's right next to an elderly home, like a home for the elderly, and she said, I hope that they're looking out here and getting a big kick out of seeing somebody have this much fun. And I'm like, who would think that way? I don't,
As a 9, it would never.
Exactly. But it's all about like making other people happy and performing for them. Yeah.
That achiever personality.
Exactly.
I think dancer's pose was the pose for the
very
3.
beautiful, a hard pose that you can make look easy and graceful. Yeah. That's a good one. They're the world likes winners, and my worth depends on what I do. And they are motivated toward being and appearing successful, working hard, leading, and winning. Now, winning is a big point here. They do not want, they want to be the winner for even the most, like, who's the first to finish the lake, or cross the line, or
how many people at the retirement home can see me on my bike? I love it.
Like, how many are listening to this podcast right now? Can we boost this?
Exactly.
How many likes
they
can I
get
get?
things done, and it's just a joy to watch.
Yeah.
It's just a joy.
Yeah, because they're so good at what they do. Okay, let's hear the 4.
4. The 4 is considered a tragic romantic. So when we think of the 4, we think of artist. And really, a lot of 4s are artists. They are poets and writers and drawers and all that stuff. And they live life intensely. So their highs are highs and their lows are lows, and they can move back and forth between those two. But they really bring to us the gift of showing up and really being in this world and really rubbing right up next to it. And
they can be with anything, with any feeling, with any emotion, and they're right there.
Sounds really raw
with you,
and just able to like be in touch.
Very in touch, very and loves beauty. Just really cares a lot about beauty and the way things look and how things move, and
I've also heard the 4 called the individualist. So like that uniqueness and specialness that they see in the world, they also kind of embody that. Like,
bingo, JC. Yes.
be unique as
authenticity is important.
well. Now, can there be a 4 that isn't an artist or doesn't have an art
I'm sure.
form? Okay.
Yeah.
But just intense experiences. One wants to really be in something without.
Well, I mean, like if you would think about a 4 as a counselor, because 4s make great counselors, and so, but in a way, that's a work of art. And,
Okay, so anything could be their work of art.
Yeah.
I've always wondered that, because when I describe a 4, I say an artist and go through the description, but I'm like, I know 4s that might not be an artist, or people I think that are
4s really don't, at the end of the day, they really don't believe anybody really gets who they are,
They feel the most misunderstood on the Enneagram.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Okay, feelings and being authentic are most important, and their motivation is toward being unique and special and finding the meaning of life. Yeah.
Deep.
Yeah, 4s
They
are
are
deep.
deep.
Yeah. Do we have a yoga pose for the 4?
Oh, that's not, we
haven't gotten there yet.
I don't know.
We'll come back to that.
I'm not, we do have one.
To adjust this.
ask. I'll let you just say.
I'll try to remember as Joan talks on the 5.
Okay. Let's hear about the 5.
Okay, the 5. The 5 is called the observer, and they really do observe. They are people who are a little bit more distant. They like to just kind of stand back, look at what's going on. Really, they don't miss a beat. They really don't miss anything, but they're usually not big talkers. They're usually quiet, and they are constantly thinking, and they really see the world through the way they think, and they want to think about things very deeply.
I've heard it described as a 5, when you ask them to participate, that it takes them a minute to actually come to an answer, because they have like a filing system going on in their head, and they have to run through all the files because of all the information that they've taken in to actually be able to put something out onto the table. And I think that
I think describes a 5 to a T. Yeah, I've heard them also be described as the investigator, very research oriented, kind of that mental.
Lots of books,
in their
lots
mind.
of. That's what I think of when I think of.
Yeah, I have one daughter that's a 5, and so instead of going into her room when she was a teenager, going into her room, popping on the bed, and like 2s want to do,
Tell me you love me.
Exactly. I really had to learn, and this is one of the ways that the Enneagram can become so helpful. Because once I understood that not to take her distance personally, it transformed our relationship. And so I learned that I would just knock on the door, and if she said yes, then I would open it and just peek my head and say, "Are you doing okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine." And really honoring that space that she needs, and not invading her. It's hard to have that much outside stimulation.
Right.
Yeah.
They need a lot of like internal time and space, and so what a gift to be able to give that to her and see
I
that.
hope so. I hope
and
so.
know that
It helped our relationship.
She's different than your other daughters and different than you. And I think that's the beauty in like knowing your partner's number, your kids, family, friends, being able to respect.
Absolutely, and it helped her sisters too. It's helped our whole family knowing each other's ways to be respectful and not take things personally.
Yeah. As a 2, we always need to remember that.
Anyways, for sure.
Let's hear the 6.
Okay, before we go on though, 5s are the mind and thinking are the highest values. I can only rely on myself. Their motivation is toward knowing, understanding, and being self-sufficient.
So truly independent.
Yeah. And their area of growth is to learn to ask for what they need. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of similar to a 2 in this sense.
Well, the 2 doesn't know what they need.
So
they
awareness.
want.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
5
I'm glad you pointed that
asking.
out, though, because the 2 literally does not know what they need.
Yeah.
It takes. When somebody asks me what I need, it takes me a couple of weeks to figure it out. I mean, it's
I know what
really
everyone
painful.
else needs.
Yeah, but a 5 absolutely knows what they need because they're thinkers and they've already determined it, but they don't want to ask.
Okay, that's
They
a
want
good
to,
distinction.
yeah.
So learning to trust and allow others in to help.
Exactly. So one of the things that I did with my daughter is just say, your needs are not a problem. You need a rug for your dorm room. Let's go get that. She would not have asked for it, but I said, look, this is okay. And so giving permission to ask for what she needs kind of helps open up the pathways, and feeling love. Okay, the 6. The 6 is what I'll call the devil's advocate. The 6 is also in the head triad, so they're very much thinkers. They plan ahead. They think. They are very concerned with being safe. They want to be safe in the world. This is a primary motivation for them. So whereas the 1 will plan because they want to do what's right and to do what's good, the 6 will plan because they want to stay safe. They want to make sure that everything's thought through carefully, and so that nothing will come out of the blue at them. So I wanted to point that out because oftentimes the behaviors can look the same. say, well, I plan too, so how do I know if I'm a 1 or what?
Yeah.
And so it's what motivates it. It's what's,
that's a good distinction.
That's why we're talking about these motivations. It's what's coming up, why they're driven to do that.
Meaning,
yes,
motivation.
So they really don't miss a beat either. They try to think through everything so that they'll be prepared in life and to stay safe. They also are extremely smart. They want to keep the people that they love safe as well. And so that's kind of a bit of a driving force for them. And it kind of can come across as fretting, being fretful. When I have another daughter who's a 6.
Perfect.
And so she was the one who at age 8 would get in the car and say, do we have enough gas in the car?
Does everyone have their seatbelts on?
Yeah, exactly.
We have snacks?
Exactly. Yeah. How long will this be? Yeah.
She was a good babysitter for my kids.
Yeah.
I
know they were safe.
Yeah.
Always safe. Absolutely.
They're very loyal. They're
very
loyal.
loyal.
Called the loyalist as well.
Wonderful. Well, because I want to make sure we get to our
Okay.
nines.
We better.
Sorry.
Okay. Yes. Go. Okay. Real quickly, the 6s, there may be hazards that lurk behind everyday appearances, is what they're kind of think, and their motivation to be certain. They're motivated toward being certain about things. Okay, the 7 is called the epicure. They are the life of the party.
Oh, they are so fun. I've heard them be described as they have champagne flowing through their veins. Does that not describe Courtney?
Yeah, shout out
Happy
to our
birthday,
friend Courtney. It's her birthday.
30th birthday. You have champagne
We
flowing
love
through your
Courtney.
veins.
You're a party every day.
Yes, just have vision, make things happen in the world, want to make the world a better place, and has the vision to do it, and has the oomph to do it, and really uses a lot of resources and gets people in on the parade and makes it fun. And
They're so funny.
All
They're
the
good
energy.
storytellers.
yeah, definitely. They're usually the class clown, bringing levity to most things. Yeah.
What is their motivation?
Okay, their motivation.
So fun. I wanna know.
Life. The idea about life is a banquet, and let's just explore it all.
Oh my gosh, I want that.
I know.
Motivation.
Yeah, and they're motivated toward being happy, to have fun things and do fun things, and to contribute to the world while they're having fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've also heard with the 7, just last thing, that they can sometimes try to avoid pain by seeking pleasure. Is that?
That's so funny you should say that. I just looked down, and so their motivation is also away from pain and suffering.
Okay.
So
They're
yes.
oriented towards the future, always moving in that forward direction.
Okay. Yeah. And just planning the next fun
Right,
thing.
and so that I don't have to feel any pain or suffering.
Yeah. Which makes sense. I don't want to feel pain and suffering. Let's all be
And they
7.
just do it such a fun way,
Or be a 9 and just don't ever feel it.
Yeah. We're getting there. So tell us about
We can't skip the 8.
8.
The 8 is the boss. They're kind of known as the boss. They care also about justice and helping the underdog. They take charge of situations. They're usually the person who's the head of things. I mean, the world is the way it is because of the 8s. They're movers and shakers. They direct things. They are our leaders. They make things happen. They have enormous energy. And they like to take care of people and protect those that are less fortunate.
Yeah. And I've just noticed in their communication style, like they are the leader. They're very assertive and direct in their communication.
The challenger is also another name for an 8.
Perfectly describes an 8.
They have the belief you have to be strong to survive. And their motivation is toward self-sufficient and strong, making an impact on the world. So they're kind of a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a force to be reckoned with, and they will make things happen. Yeah. And then we've got our 9.
Made it!
This is a 9.
I think I might let you talk about this one.
Oh no.
that would be counterintuitive to a 9.
Whitney's also a 9 too. She
Lovely
was not with us
peacemakers.
today, so.
Yes, lovely peacemakers,
Whitney's
mediators.
not with us.
No.
Yeah, mediator or peacemaker.
Yeah, they're like so harmonious.
But also that is the challenge, is that we're so harmonious that we tend to forget ourselves, and we'd rather just kind of blend into what's going on. And so kind of a funny story, just quickly. I showed up today to the podcast in a green shirt.
And we have a green screen
behind
behind
us.
us.
Screen.
So she was invisible.
invisible.
With just a head.
Just a head.
Yeah.
And that still fits for a 9.
Right. Not intentional, but just a totally funny, story.
Well, and say what happened on the drive over here.
What happened?
About you were.
Oh, so the other thing, so a 9 can often, Carl would completely agree with this story. This is a great story as well. 9s, when they need to do something, because that is a repressed center, is our doing, we get sleepy. We get kind of sleepy.
Yes, Whitney's the same way.
Yeah.
Kind of more lethargic and.
And so on the way over, I looked at Jen. I was like, I'm really kind of sleepy today. And
Jen's like so anxious and freaking out, probably her true self.
A really great story about Carl and myself, a 9 and a 2 in the car with the kids in the back seat. Is one of the kids when he was younger did a lot of tantrums and loud. So we were on a vacation on our way home, and it's really loud, and all of a sudden I'm sleeping in the car, and he said he looked over at me and just could not believe that here I was sleeping during this. It was because I had to check out.
Yeah.
So I think a really important thing about a 9 is that intense emotions of any kind can become overwhelming and too much. So we tend to make everything okay. The motivation is to keep the peace. So if JC calls me, right, if there's not peace, it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. So I will self-sacrifice to keep the peace.
Okay.
So if you call me for dinner, JC, and you say, hey, what do you want to eat? I'll say, oh, whatever you want, because that's much easier than me asserting myself and saying, hey, why don't we go have Chinese tonight?
Yeah.
When possibly JC doesn't like Chinese.
Right. So you just kind of defer to somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
It joins. Yeah. She just joins in. Okay. They join in.
Yeah. You merge with.
I have found with a lot of people seeking their numbers that they tend to choose a 9 first, and then they find their number. Is there something with that? Like I don't know.
Huh. Maybe we'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And get back. But because we want to make sure there's a little time, sorry, I'm the timekeeper for this episode. Can you hear that,
right? Good. You're keeping us on task.
Yeah, sorry, if I were a 9, this would be hard. But 2, I want to help and make sure everybody gets what they need, including our listeners that sent in some questions for that Let's Chat.
So we probably won't be able to get to all of our questions, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Some of our favorite books and resources for the Enneagram. What are y'all's favorite books?
I wondered too, we could just post this on our show notes and direct links to these resources, right? And that way, they can go right there because it might be hard to remember.
Yeah.
Should we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. So, Jen, what are your favorite books on the Enneagram?
Well, so
or resources.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, I would like to just give a plug because we're here in Dallas, and so I would like to give a plug for a lovely woman who is kind of known for the Enneagram here in Dallas, and her name is Suzanne Stabile.
Yeah.
And she is just spreading the word and getting it out there in such a lovely way with workshops, and you can buy videos and tapes, and she's doing a podcast now, and she's got a couple books out.
Workshops. So she's definitely a good resource.
Yes.
And it's, what is it, Life in the Trinity Ministry?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yes. I have so many going through my head. Laura, can you think of any on the top of your head?
Well, what I was thinking of, what I use often just in the car on the way back and forth to work and picking up the kids from school is I love Ian Cron's Typology podcast.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
That is a good one.
Because he interviews all different numbers. And it's just rich. Like
Yeah.
it's a really rich, fun way to kind of learn more about Enneagram. And he always gives you a tip for whatever number he's interviewing at the end of the podcast. So it's like a moving
like
toward
that.
health tip.
Yeah.
So that's one
And
of my
I know
faves.
I use the Ena app.
Oh, yeah.
And that gives a lot of information about each number, and you can also take a test on there. And then you had a website that you really like.
So the Enneagram Institute,
Yeah.
I think is a wealth of knowledge, and similar to the podcast, it sounds where it gives a tip. You can sign up on your number, and it will send you just like a little thought or a consideration to help yourself each day. So be yourself, best self in that number.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
And
And
we'll
then
link some more.
Helen Palmer is really well known in that, and I did bring a couple books here. The Sacred Enneagram by Christopher Heuritz, and that's a deep and lovely read. And then, of course, one of my very favorites is Richard Rohr, and this is the Enneagram, A Christian Perspective. I think
Okay.
those are excellent books as well.
I also think The Road Back to You is a nice intro.
That's Suzanne.
Yeah. It's a nice intro book. One
Yeah.
that's, I don't want to ever call anything surface level, but I mean, it gives you a nice basic knowledge of it so that you can move in deeper because it is so deep. There's so much to it.
There's so much more than what we talked about here.
Okay, so we'll post the
So-
links, and then do you want to choose one
Yeah,
question?
we have one more question. So this is very specific for a specific number. How do twos work on not helping / fixing? And in relationship, this is the second part of the question, in relationship with sixes, how do they not help? Or how do they have a better relationship whenever sixes don't want help? Does that make sense?
So just the relationship between a 2 and a 6, the 2's tendency is to help.
Yeah, right.
And how do they help themselves not help?
Right. How do they stop helping?
What comes to my mind initially is just that this is sort of where the work is to start to recognize that sometimes people really don't want your help.
Ooh,
You know,
that
yeah.
does it too.
I know that's
What?
hard. It's hard to hear. I know. I know.
find that interesting with a 6. Typically, 6s really are searching outside of themselves for answers when a 6 really knows the answer. The majority of the time, a 6 really knows, they just don't trust.
Yeah. So letting sixes maybe find their own truth, their own like trusting themselves,
And they'll ask if they. I mean, 6s won't hesitate to ask if they really
like that.
want it.
Oh, they'll
yeah,
ask.
they'll ask. And so the 2's sort of off the hook. I mean, the 2 could say, "I'm here for you. You know, if you'd like me to be in any way." And make that available, but the 2 work.
And that is the work for the 2.
That is
to
the work.
say that, to say, I'm here for you if you need or want the help.
But not just plow in
Right.
and have that
give-
emotional boundary.
Exactly. That's a
Do you
good
have
way to
something
put
to
it.
add, Julie?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing because I did do a little research on this question.
It's very specific.
Yeah, so once again with the Enneagram Institute website, you can look at the compatibility between numbers. So what I
careful.
found between a 2 and a 6 was that sometimes they said a 6, due to their anxiety, can appear ambivalent and kind of be back and forth in relationships. So it seems to me then the 2's work would be able to recognize that it's not necessarily about them, give the 6 space, and also say, hey, let me know what I can do. And then the 6 work would be to kind of recognize their tendencies and affirm the 2, right?
Yeah.
So kind of melding in the middle to work that out.
Yeah, and I think
that's
with
beautiful.
2's too, being able to respect that, like we've all said, that sometimes people don't need your help, and letting other people clean up their side of the road. That's so hard for 2's to do because we want to clean up our side of the road and theirs. And that's not our job.
But to go back to that motivation to instill in the 6 to trust that they can handle it. So 2 needs to back up, not enable, so the 6 can realize, okay, I can handle this.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it's not the way that 2 envisions, but okay, I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah, that's good.
Really
Well, and
good.
I just want to talk about relationship and the Enneagram. I mean, we have a specific one between 2 and 6, and the Enneagram Institute says compatibility between numbers. And I really think that every number is compatible when we recognize where we're coming from and what motivates us. And if we can recognize that within ourselves and honor that within the person that we're with, then we have the ability to create a lasting relationship within any number
for
pattern.
sure. Yeah, and I think as long as any number's in health, as well.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to the end of our podcast. I want to keep talking.
I know.
This is so sad. There's so much more to say about the Enneagram. I want to ask Ziggy, do you know what your number is? Our tech wizard back there?
I did take an
there.
online test while you guys were talking about it.
Nice.
They say that I am probably a 5, 6, or 3, most likely a 5.
Oh, see, now we know that, and we can support Ziggy. And we
And we can talk afterwards.
Like not
what do you
talking
think
to him,
about that?
giving him a lot of space. No. But thank you guys so much for tuning in today. You can find us at whiterockcounseling.com. everydaytherapypodcast.com. Please subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Rate us. Give us some honest feedback, y'all. What you like, what you don't like. And next week we'll be talking about self-care. So anything else, Julian?
And then we'll just make sure to follow up with links so you can contact our lovely guests and with those resources. So be on the lookout for that.
And look out for their workshop on yoga and the Enneagram.
October
what is the
25th
date?
through the 27th.
Okay, and where can we find you guys, Laura?
So, dragonfire.yoga. So that's a new, ending. So it's dragonfire.yoga. And that's my personal website, which directs us into Lifeology, which is where we both work.
WeFixBrains.com.
That's right.
We'll list all of that in our show notes. Thank you guys. See y'all next week.